Your infatuation with someone, particularly a girl, can push you to achieve things you never thought were possible. To discover how, join us for the complete video on Revived. In this video, we'll be reviewing the 2017 thriller movie Infidelity in Suburbia and recalling its plot. To get started, turn on the subtitles as there are spoilers ahead. The film commences with a couple engaged in a passionate makeout session until they are interrupted by the woman's son, who shows them a dead mouse. The woman begins to scream. In the subsequent scene, a family of 3 is setting up their boat at a boatyard. Laura, the woman, discusses renovating her kitchen, but her husband doesn't appear to approve of the idea. She then warns her son to be cautious with the knife. While her husband is away on a phone call, we see another man continually gazing at Laura. She slips while pushing her cart, but the man comes to her rescue, preventing her from falling. When the man departs, Laura's husband returns with a newspaper featuring a headline regarding an arson incident on Denton Island. In the meantime, their son Jamie slips and falls into the water, but the same man saves him and brings him to his parents. The man introduces himself as Elliot, and the parents thank him for his help. Afterwards, they extend an invitation to Elliot for a family dinner. During the dinner, Laura discusses Elliot with her best friend, Mira, and expresses fascination with his physique. They invite him into the house to serve him dinner, during which he admires one of Laura's paintings. She informs him that she used to sell her paintings, but Greg turned her studio into a work shed. Meanwhile, Greg is on the phone with his secretary and appears to be flirting with her. Elliot offers to complete the renovation at family rates, and the family happily accepts. The next day, Laura and Mira discuss Elliot's attractiveness while jogging, and Laura returns home to find Elliot shirtless in the yard. As he explains the renovation, Laura cannot keep her eyes off his body, and she runs upstairs to take a shower. While she is in the shower, Elliot silently passes in front of the room. Later, while Laura is at the market, Elliot surprises her with a cannoli and juice from a bakery called Leticia, and they return to Laura's home. Mira arrives and is also fascinated by Elliot, asking him about girlfriends and his living arrangements. Elliot mentions that he has no girlfriend but has his eye on someone. Later, Laura goes to the boatyard with Elliot to check if anyone attempted to break in, and discovers a pair of purple panties belonging to Hannah, Greg's secretary. She becomes upset and cries, and Elliot comforts her, taking her to his boat and bringing her coffee. He encourages her to move on and find a new path, and they exchange smiles. Elliot is seen crying as he looks at pictures of his mother, and in the next scene, Laura questions Greg about his activities the previous night. He claims he was at work and called Hannah for notes. Greg tries to get close to Laura, but she pushes him away. The next morning, Elliot arrives at Laura's house with renovation supplies, and Laura finds Jamie chatting with him. He has a way with children, which is why Laura invites him to join Mira and Charlie while she takes a shower. Elliot follows her into the bathroom, and they begin making out after she consents to his advances. Later, Laura visits the boatyard and observes several couples embracing each other before speaking with her husband, Greg, about teenagers sneaking onto boats for romantic encounters. When Laura mentions finding purple underwear with the flap open, Greg assumes it must have belonged to a teenage boy. Laura is surprised when Greg confesses his love for her and hugs her. Meanwhile, Elliot plays with Jamie in the yard until Laura asks Jamie to play with Charlie and takes Elliot aside, telling him they must stop what they are doing. Despite her attempts to resist him, Elliot seduces her. Elliot is later seen in his boat, cutting out Greg's face from pictures of Laura and replacing it with his own. He visits Laura with roses for her birthday and reveals that he knows everything about her, causing her to feel uneasy. Greg arrives, and upon seeing the yellow roses, is surprised as they are Laura's favorite. Greg leaves for work, and Elliot comes into Laura's house, but she scolds him for his actions and asks him to leave. Elliot becomes upset and shivers in grief before the scene fades out. Laura tells Jamie that Elliot is no longer working for them, but he continues to stalk her. At her surprise birthday party, Hannah arrives and tells Laura how excited Greg was to plan the event. Elliot is introduced to Hannah, who tries to seduce him, but he is fixated on Laura. After the party, Laura confesses her infidelity to Greg, but he reassures her and they begin to become intimate. Elliot takes Hannah to the boat, but she discovers that he is not interested in her and leaves. Laura becomes irritated and decides to leave when she notices pictures of herself on the wall. Elliot becomes enraged and strangles her from behind, causing her to pass out. The following morning, Greg approaches Laura and speaks affectionately to her, promising to spend more time with her after their trip. They share a romantic kiss, but Elliot watches them with envy. Laura discovers that Elliot has transformed the workshed into a studio, with every canvas bearing the words Elliot and Laura forever. She is confused by the situation and then hears Jamie screaming. She rushes to find him and he informs her that Elliot had been there. Laura confronts Elliot and orders him to stop interfering in their lives. However, his infatuation with her becomes more intense and he begins to act aggressively. He forcibly holds Laura, causing her to scream and attracting Jamie's attention. Elliot's presence outside prompts Laura to release him and leave the house. Later that night, she reads disturbing reviews on Elliot's website, including a comment from someone named Purple Wallflower, claiming that Elliot destroyed her life. The following morning, Laura travels to Denton Island and seeks out a purple wallflower at a local shop, where she learns about a woman named Willie Hamill who was also negatively impacted by Elliot. Willie shares that Elliot ruined her marriage and family and suggests Laura investigate what he did to his own mother. Meanwhile, news of Hannah's body being found is watched by Mira and Bill, who try to contact Greg but are interrupted when Elliot appears. Later, Laura wakes up feeling frightened and discovers evidence of Elliot's presence in her home. Meanwhile, Greg is tied up by Elliot but manages to escape before being caught again. Laura confides in Mira about her affair with Elliot and expresses her suspicion about Greg's disappearance. She visits a bakery where she learns about Elliot's troubled childhood and his mother's unfaithful husband. The situation worsened when he set fire to the entire house, causing Laura to feel even more afraid as she listened to the story. In a panic, she tried to leave, but the old woman told her that Elliot had visited earlier and announced his intention to marry a widow and become a stepfather. Laura rushed home only to find Elliot waiting for her. She questioned him about Greg's whereabouts, but he became violent and started to physically abuse her. Jamie arrived but was sent away, and Elliot dragged Laura to the bedroom, tying her up. Despite her attempts to resist, Laura eventually confessed her love for Elliot, prompting him to untie her and have dinner with her. Jamie was tied up downstairs, but Laura encouraged him to play along. However, Mira and Bill arrived, and Elliot forced them to go upstairs to the bedroom with him. After Elliot let Jamie go outside for some privacy, he attempted to rape Laura, but Jamie interrupted them, causing Elliot to have a childhood flashback. Taking advantage of the situation, Laura hit Elliot and tried to escape with Jamie. However, Elliot woke up and began to terrorize Laura, ultimately hitting her in the head with a hammer. The following scene depicts the protagonist carrying a body in a sack to a boat, but Laura quickly intervenes and frees herself from the sack with a knife. She then confronts Elliot, stabbing him and making her escape. After following a blood trail, Laura finds Greg in an unconscious state and attempts to contact the Coast Guard for help, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Elliot reappears and Laura strikes him before fleeing. However, Elliot pursues her and eventually catches her in an upstairs room. Fortunately, Laura manages to push him out of a window, causing him to fall and fatally injure himself. The movie concludes with a happy family scene, during which Laura discovers some tasty cannoli in the fridge, courtesy of Greg. The film ends with a request for viewers to like, subscribe, and activate notifications for future movie recaps.